Welcome back to the Squared Circle. Andy here. Joining me, as always, now is my TSC co-host, if you will. Second appearance for this man in just a few weeks. Last time we were here, we were talking ECW One Night Stand. It's, of course, Stefan Bennett. This week, however, slightly different because I think, got to admit, Stefan, did you ever think we would be sat here now about to talk about the retirement of Vincent Kennedy McMahon from the WWE?
Well, I was expecting it at some point because of obviously the age, and you and I think we discussed last time when we was doing this, when we was discussing about there's something not right about Vince. He looks, he has aged, and you can see he looks tired and worn. I didn't expect to see it happen now, but that's what's happening, and it's now potentially the biggest moment in WWE in so many years now, because we are in a position now where, okay, there's this debate whether some people are still skeptical about Vince not still running certain things behind the scenes because of his shares and things like that. I'm hoping that's not the case. I hope he is genuinely retired and he's hands off now. But we will see. We'll see.
Well, let's give you the facts. Let's go through what we do know. And this is what's come out. Now, it was last Friday, recording this on the 25th of July, that Vince tweeted out, at 77, it's time for me to retire. Thank you, WWE Universe. Then, now, forever together. Hashtag WWE. Hashtag thankful. Later that evening was, of course, Friday Night SmackDown. This took place in the afternoon in the States. Around about 2 o'clock, roughly Eastern time, the retirement announcement came out. Stephanie McMahon then appeared on SmackDown and confirmed it. Vince has left the WWE. Vince has retired. Now, we've had 72 hours since that point where things have been up in the air. We've been hearing that Bruce Prichard is head of creative. We understood the first big announcement that came out was Triple H was back as EVP of Talent Relations, and Stephanie was officially now chairwoman of the WWE. That's weird, isn't it? Just hearing that.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm assuming most people saw Stephanie's appearance on SmackDown. She genuinely looked emotional, and I think that spoke volumes in some ways as well. I know I heard today, I read today that Triple H apparently has got all of his old duties, but now he's head of creative as well. He's got the creative responsibilities as well. That intrigues me because with a lot of people have been saying for a long time, Triple H is the sort of guy that needs to be running creative in WWE because of what he did with NXT. Before the NXT 2.0 that we've got now, which I really am struggling with. And if that is the case, I'm genuinely excited. There were other things that I read today that apparently he's trying to rebuild 12 months worth of burnt bridges and mistakes that have been made in his absence because of his health. It just makes me think that now, because it's bittersweet, isn't it? That a lot of these so-called superstars that were so big in NXT, your Adam Coles, your Keith Lees, Tommaso Ciampas, and all that, Johnny Garganos, the ones that have left, Killer Cross example, another one. It's bittersweet that they've not long it's only been like sort of months that they've been sort of released and shown the door. And now Triple H is back in that position. And it's kind of like, I get what you're saying, but I don't think for some of those guys, that's actually such a bad thing, because we know Gargano hasn't signed with anyone, right? He's still a free agent. He hasn't even gone back in the squared circle since February when he left the WWE. We know Killer Cross has been doing some things with MLW and a bit with Impact and a bit with New Japan, but he technically hasn't signed with anyone. Well, he's also on board with that Create Your Narrative as well with Adam Scherr and EC3 and that,
So there is still the option, I think, that you're going to see these guys coming in. Now, what we do need to address, and I think this is very key to say this, everyone's going to think that Triple H coming in as head of creative, head of talent, Stephanie is chairwoman and co-CEO with Nick Khan, we'll touch on that in a second, means like that, WWE is going to change. Let's be frank, that's not going to happen. Yeah, there's going to be booking plans in place, I would imagine now, right the way through to WrestleMania. But what you will see is the new twist coming in. And I think you will slowly see them unraveling some of those booking decisions that have been made. What I'm intrigued about is Bruce Prichard, because it was announced on Saturday that Bruce was being made head of creative. Now he's not. He's back to being just a standard creative member. We knew and we know he was a McMahon yes man all the way through. So what does the future hold for Bruce Prichard? Because I can see him being released and I can see Paul Heyman being pushed right the way up into a big creative role.
I'm on board with what you just said. I think he'll get released. I do. I mean, who wouldn't want Paul Heyman in that sort of role anyway? Heyman gets it. This is what we need. We need. I mean, I'm not saying Bruce Prichard never is, but that's always been his problem. He's always been a Vince yes man. But when you've got people like Triple H, and again, refer to what he did with NXT, you talk about Paul Heyman. These are the people that they get it. This is why the fans love these guys so much, is because they're like, you think the way we think. You know what it is that we want. And that's why it gets people excited. I hope that's going to be the case, that Heyman may step into that. But I just don't see where Prichard goes from here in WWE. I agree with you. I think he'll be released.
See, I think we're going to be seeing some big changes, because we understand as well that Kevin Dunn is reportedly next to go. And if some of what I'm hearing about Kevin Dunn is legit, I mean, 2019 turning around saying that Becky Lynch wasn't attractive enough, Rebecca Knox wasn't attractive enough to be women's champion, releasing Billie Kay because he didn't get her. You know, I mean, this.
Sorry, the Iconics were brilliant. You know, and what I mean. As much as I hated the fact that they separated the Iconics, what they had with the Billie Kay thing, where she was doing the resume thing, and it worked. It's a similar thing when they did the Damien Mizdow angle. It started off a little bit silly. You think, okay, where's this going? And all of a sudden, they're over. They're making the best of a strange, story like angle, and that's the thing. And yeah, Kevin Dunn, I know I've seen over God knows how many years I've seen, people that have left, come back to WWE, or they've left, they've said different things. They've done shoots on him, and, again, I think he's another one of those ones that if he's next on the list to go, I think it's a positive. Yeah. I think WWE needs to move forward from a lot of the Vince yes men and the mistakes that they made, the people that hold the company back.
It's funny because you said earlier on NXT 2.0. I think this is exactly what the WWE need. They need to now become WWE 2.0. And for once, as a wrestling fan, as a WWE, lifelong supporter back from 1987 when I first started watching it through to, I've watched it religiously for a number of years now. But, I'm excited now to see what they're going to do. I'm excited to see that transition from a performer on NXT. Like, let's take Braun Breaker, yeah? So NXT champion at the moment, you knew that if he came up to the main roster, that gimmick would be completely nullified as per Vince McMahon, right? Now you are going to see him coming through. Let's look at Max Dupree, LA Knight, completely ruined when he joined SmackDown to the point that he's now been axed from that, thank God, that Maximum Male Models angle.
Well, I'm hearing apparently he's got some, he's caused some heat backstage, and that's what, and we might not be seeing him again. I hope that's not the case, because I like the LA Knight character. I thought it was fine. This Max Dupree thing, this Mount Model thing.
But that heat was with Vince, not with Triple H. Triple H has always been a big supporter of him, and I think now what we're going to see is NXT refocus back to maybe the black and gold. I don't think they'll transition it back because it's too quick and it's a bit of egg on your face. But I think Shawn Michaels will take much more of an active lead in conjunction with Triple H as what he does now, and their main roster will change.
I don't think we'll see many changes with NXT 2.0 because I think the guys, people even like William Regal after he left, Shawn Michaels and that, they said NXT needed to change. They wanted it to get back to bringing the fresh faces in and giving them that opportunity. The issue was, and always was while Vince was in charge, was going to be that transition from NXT to Raw or SmackDown. Because apart from, the likes of Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, Bayley, Charlotte Flair, and to name only a small few that have actually had successful careers on the main roster since they've transitioned, it's kind of like almost like your head's automatically on the chopping block when you're going to get that call up. Now it's a completely different playing field. Now they've potentially got the opportunity to say, when Triple H says, you're ready, you're up, for them to turn around and say, all right, we're not going to dress you in ridiculous gear and give you a completely different look. We're not going to, give you ridiculous nicknames that you don't need and things like that. If you're a star in NXT and you're over, but you've done everything you can and you feel a bit stifled in NXT, then we'll take you up. We'll put you with the bigger names and things like that, and we will show you what you can do. And this is one of the things I love about Triple H is he's one of those last few people that are in and around the company from the likes of the Austin Rock era, the era where, it was seldom, but Vince turned around and said, okay, I'll give you a bit more creative over your character, show me what you got. That's what made them the big stars. It wasn't Vince. It was, it was Austin with the Stone Cold Steve Austin gimmick. It was The Rock with the Rock gimmick. Turn around and say, the Rocky Maivia thing wasn't working because they were allowed to have this creative freedom. I mean, Bray Wyatt was having that with The Fiend, etc. But then the booking, because Vince was just kind of like, he just poorly booked it and it just ruined the whole thing.
Okay, so there's a question for you. The Fiend, Bray Wyatt, he's already been tweeting some very... That's Bray Wyatt. He always tweets some weird stuff. But, Wyndham Rotunda has been tweeting some very strange things over the past 72 hours. Is he going back to WWE? And if he is, or if any of these returns are happening, when would you debut them?
Right. See, this is an interesting thing because I had a conversation with Wyndham in Dallas when at WrestleCon, and I'm kind of pissed at him actually because I said to him, I'm loving the teases that you're doing. I'm loving all of that. I'm excited to see where you're ending up. And he turned around and said, well, keep an eye out this weekend, especially. I was like, okay, people expect him to show up at Ring of Honor. They thought he was going to be at Ring of Honor that weekend. It wasn't him. And it was like, okay, maybe he will be at Mania. I know it was Cody Rhodes, but there was still no Bray Wyatt. So it's like, okay, what's going on? Nothing happened. Now, I follow the YouTube channel that released the videos for him, and he's still teasing. And as soon as Vince, they announced the whole Vince had left and whatnot, there was a teasing video where he turned around and they were showing you clips of what looked like the teaser, what most people think is the Edge's going to be Edge's return with that gothic like thing and like that. And then then it was something like "I'm coming too" and all this. And it's like straight away you're like, well, is he? Does this mean that maybe Edge is going to come back with Bray Wyatt? Does this, I love that whole thing anyway, but I can see him coming back to WWE because he hasn't been anywhere else. The Office, this guy is never going to be short of offers and money. Absolutely not. He's got one of the best minds, creative wise, there is to this day, and has been for the last at least 5 to nearly 10 years. And I think maybe, there have been some bridges being built backstage between him and WWE. And I think now I wouldn't be surprised to see him back. If we was going to book it, I would have to say it would most likely be... That's to say, if he isn't part of this Edge and Judgment Day thing, personally, I would book it for either Rumble or Mania. So it's got to be on one of the big ones.
That's a really interesting comment. You would book it for Rumble or Mania. Would you, or do you think WWE? And we're going to touch more about Vince in just a second, but this is all kind of connected. It's the bigger story now. Do you think WWE will do a WCW and they will just go reset? That's it. Reset. Get SummerSlam out of the way. You're going to have Roman Reigns retain over Brock Lesnar. We know that's going to happen, especially after the walkout on Friday night on SmackDown. I don't think you're going to see much changing at SummerSlam. But do you say the Monday night after SummerSlam, the Raw after WrestleMania, if you will, it's a reset. It's a complete restart. It's the McMahon Helmsley era, if you want to go back that way again.
I think there would be some element of truth in that. I think that is, as you say, would be the reset, would be the Raw after SummerSlam. I know there's been a lot of talk that, the board and that have been really, really in disarray with the way SummerSlam's looking to be booked. They're not happy. I actually wouldn't be surprised if maybe some of the backlash of that's had a little bit in terms of pushing Vince out a little bit quicker, maybe. Maybe the board are thinking, holy crap, we might actually be in some sort of crisis here. Because when you do look at WWE and the roster and that, they really are struggling with main eventers and big stars. Hence, while we're getting Lesnar Reigns 150th time, I mean, I just see a main event in Dallas at Mania, and like we're here, 3-4 months later, and they're main eventing it again for the title, and it's just kind of like, I have no issue with Lesnar or Reigns, but I'm like, I want to see something different, and it's difficult when you've had Reigns beat everybody that there is to beat, and I think the consensus is he's going to stay champion until Mania, and there's talk about, The Rock's going to face him, and I'm still not 100% certain that's going to happen. But Rome wasn't built in a day, and there's a lot of damage that needs to be repaired in WWE. One of the things are, if they're going to make big changes, they need to have a long, hard look at the roster and think, right, okay, where can we fix this with? Well, how can we make the best with what we've got? And there is great, huge talent that have been held back in WWE that are still on the roster, that have been for years. I mean, people forget that R-Truth was actually a really good wrestler, but he's just a comedy, he's just a comedy gimmick these days. I think it would, a few people could do with maybe some repackaging. They got Tommaso Ciampa on there, who we know how good he is. At the moment, he's playing second fiddle to The Miz, being his sort of running buddy at the moment. That needs to be scrapped. They need to put Ciampa, on a pedestal and let him have a real decent shot. So I would expect to see minor changes at first. I would say that the foundation is starting to be laid. And then when I think we hit probably Rumble after Rumble around Mania time, I think that's where we will start seeing the bigger changes, etc.
What's going to be interesting now is seeing what happens in AEW. What happens when contracts are coming up for renewal, because we know that AEW is overstacked. We know that.
Oh, absolutely.
And you can look at Ring of Honor as well to a degree, because you look at that Ring of Honor pay-per-view from Saturday night, which was excellent. No word of a lie, it was a fantastic event, but it was a lot of AEW talent on there, not necessarily the Ring of Honor side. But you've got to think of people like MJF. We've heard the rumors that it's a work. Is it a work? Is it not a work? But I think now you've got people, if they go, they will suddenly start going back to WWE. And I think someone like Wardlow, someone like MJF, Brian Cage, who we know is in a bit of a catch-22 situation with them at the moment. Even someone like Hangman Adam Page or Daniel Garcia from the JAS, or any of those young guys would now, I think, be the Triple H era. They will fly. And I think you're going to see a big transition coming.
I can see it. And I think now that it's dare I say, a Vince-free zone almost, and probably a Vince Stooge-free zone as well. It's, I think, to a lot of people, Triple H, Stephanie, and that running it, who are respected by so many people in other companies. I think that to them, WWE has probably become a more attractive proposition. And I think some of them might be kind of on the fence a little bit and say, well, hold on, well, if my contract's up, let's say 6 months away, let's keep tabs on WWE. Let's see, let's have the feelers out there. I'm in contact. I've got friends that work for, that are on the roster in WWE. Let's listen out if they think it's a much better environment. If they feel it's a worthy place of going. And I think that's what's going to start happening. Is the word to get around that WWE is a better place to work now, and that there's more opportunity there, and you get a little bit more freedom to express yourself there. And I think all of a sudden, you may actually start seeing these names. MJF. I mean, the guy's money. The guy is legit the best heel in the business right now, in my opinion. I think he's amazing. I really do. And I think Triple H probably looks at MJF, from afar and goes, "This kid, this guy could do so much for us.
I mean, you got to think Triple H was out for 12 months nearly with the heart condition, the cardiac problem when he just disappeared. You've got to think that he's been sat at home recovering, looking at Impact, looking at MLW, looking at New Japan, looking at AEW, cussing Vince for letting people like Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson leave and go to the competition. And you've got to be sitting there thinking, I'm going to get this guy. This is my wish list. This is what I'm going to do. But what you've got to be careful of is that you're not retreading old ground. So you bring Bryan Danielson back and you put him on the main roster again. You can't be Daniel Bryan. It's got to be different.
It has. I mean, I always loved his American Dragon gimmick. Anyway, I mean, I personally, if I'm honest, I'm not entirely sure I would bring Daniel Bryan back or Bryan Danielson back. I think he's done everything there is to do there.
I agree.
I don't really see much. I mean, I know there's a lot of talk saying that his injury is worse than they feared, and there's no estimated time for him to come back. I hope
he's back Wednesday.
He's back Wednesday. I don't know. There are some people, like you said, they've done it all. They've been around for a long time in WWE, and it's kind of like I don't think we need to see it again.
No. I think if you're looking at the AEW roster, you're looking at the likes of Sammy Guevara. Love him or hate him, that kid can work.
I think he's brilliant. Yeah, he's a great talent. And
as much as people don't like this pairing between him and Tay Conti, the real life couple, it's getting heat, right? And that's what you need. Yeah. The MJF and the Miz battle, which is going to happen, is going to be off the chart. Wardlow coming in, being pushed properly. Even someone like, I know it may never happen, but someone like FTR going back to the WWE, they never had a bad word to say about Triple H. It was always Vince.
Well, absolutely. Well, I'm glad you touched on that, because that was actually going to be one of the next things I wanted to mention is the state of the tag team division in WWE. I mean, it's been so bad for so long and unappreciated and things like that. There are great tag teams out there, and I'm hoping that Triple H will view this and think we need to bring back how tag team wrestling was, because tag team wrestling is so hot in AEW. And I mean, AEW at the moment is mainly full of different factions of different sizes and things like that anyway, which again, because it's too stacked, I would like to see him look at FTR again and maybe look at like the likes of Santana and Ortiz and, look at other tag teams that are, in Impact, and some that might be, on the indies and things like that, and think, well, let's, I mean, you look at NXT 2.0, I mean, grizzled young veterans are now being repackaged. Not quite sure what I make of that, but, I'll give it a go. I always give everything a go, because sometimes it can always surprise you. But, you've got tag teams there. We know, I mean, you and I living in the UK, that, we see all the different promotions around here. There's some fantastic tag teams over here as well. I'd love to see the tag team division become stellar once again. And I'm hoping that's one thing that Triple H really does bring back.
I mean, we talk about talent going back, and this is all hypothetical. This is all, us fantasy booking, and you could go for hours talking about who you would bring in. But you've got to think at some point, you talk tag teams, you talk the Young Bucks, and you've got to think Cody's jumped. You get the right offer, they will go. So that brings me on to my next point. Should Tony Khan now be worried?
For the moment, no. But like I said, Rome wasn't built today. But I think he should be a little bit more open-minded and wary that this change is happening. I would actually like to see it flipped on its head, because Tony Khan has said openly in the past he would be open to working with WWE, just as he's worked with Impact, he's worked with AEW, he now owns Ring of Honor. I'll go on to that in a second as well, actually, because I wouldn't 100% rule out, with the head on his shoulders that Triple H and that has, to actually not rule out them potentially working together.
Oh, they're open to it. Yeah, Triple H is open to it. I think the thing about the McMahon, I'm going to call it the McMahon Helmsley era, because I remember 2001, is the fact that Triple H, even though he's old school and he's grown up in the ranks and he's the wrestling veteran, he's adjusted with the times, whereas Vince has always been territory. It's the New York territory. Everything comes to me. It's the big bubble. It's the WWE universe, right? Whereas Triple H is going, actually, no, AEW's out there and Impact's out there. Why would we not, why would we not do it? He's the one who brokered the deal with Impact to let AJ go and do coverage and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's not 1995 anymore. We know that there are other companies out there. And if you're a wrestling fan, you're going to watch one of 5,200 different products around the, around the globe. So you'd be foolish not to do that, to get the rub. You've got to think, someone like Cody Rhodes, when he's back, if Forbidden Door happens, how uncomfortable is that going to be for Cody Rhodes if they do AEW versus WWE and there's Cody Rhodes in the middle?
I mean, personally, I think Cody would be professional enough to, do his thing, without a doubt. I think as well, like you said about Vince, has always been about the territory. And what I was going to say about the thing is, I mean, you look at Tony Khan, he now owns both AEW and Ring of Honor. Well, Vince owned WWE and WCW, and he's got rid of WCW. And it always comes back to that, what if you kept WCW running and let them do, have maybe Shane run things there while he oversaw things and that. What if that had kept going and going and going? I still think he shot himself in his foot a little bit with that one. I don't think WCW would have exactly been what it was, but I think it still could have benefited Vince. I mean, if they had kept WCW going to the best of its ability with the names that it had sort of leading it, and then you had the up and coming, like the new blood that they were trying to do, sort of coming up in the ranks, working with them, learning, etc. I think, the diehard WCW fan base could have stayed on board watching that, and Vince could have had, money coming in from what WCW were doing, as well as what, things coming in from WWE. I mean, instead of wasting talent on the WWE roster that wasn't working, send them to WCW. Mix it, let them learn from the likes of Booker T, Scott Steiner, Flair, Sting, and all that. Like, let them go mix it up with them guys and that, But yeah, I don't know. It's just. It's a very weird thing, because like we're thinking Vince is done, and you have to tell yourself that we are now living in that time now. Vince is no longer running WWE, and it just still sounds crazy.
I mean, one of the topic points we had on the sheet tonight was to talk about what impact has Vince McMahon retiring had on the larger business, and I think we've done that for the majority of the show, because whichever way you go on this, Vince is having an impact. Now, I've read some Facebook comments from people who say, Vince couldn't be bothered to talk to the talent. He couldn't be bothered to do this. He broke wrestling. He destroyed wrestling. He completely killed it. But I think actually my argument back to that is, without Vince McMahon, love the guy or hate the guy, without Vince, this business, this industry that we love, whether or not you love WWE or not, wouldn't exist without Vince McMahon. It wouldn't exist without him taking a small local promotion based in New York and turning it into a worldwide phenomenon. It wouldn't exist without him kicking off WrestleMania at Madison Square Garden in 1985 on closed circuit, to doing the largest gate of 93,000 fans at Pontiac at WrestleMania 3. Whether he's got a bit jaded, and it happens, you live in your own bubble, you get corrupted by the almighty dollar of, everybody's got a price, and I think he had one. You cannot take away Vince's impact to this industry, both in the past, the present, and in the future.
Vince in his prime, and I still say his prime was probably from the birth of the Attitude Era, probably until the late 2000s. Yeah. I think Vince was a genius.
Yeah, I agree.
I think he was an absolute genius. The guy, I'm not going to defend him, but I think that maybe he had one too many yes men, but I think he was ill-advised by some of these people. Mm-hmm. I think he put his trust in some of the wrong people. That happens in life as well, to even everyday people like you and I. People can get in our ear and give us poor advice. And we don't see it, but and that's the thing. There are so many people around the world, doing local promotions, etc. That they all badmouth WWE or badmouth Vince McMahon, and it's kind of like, well, in some tangled sort of way, the place you are now exists because of Vince McMahon in some way, because someone's passion from WWE or WCW, it ignited their passion for wrestling, and because they're a passion, they've become a promoter, and they've set up this promotion and giving you an opportunity to fulfill your dream. Everything stems back from the popularity of what Vince did and what WWE were, because they were the mecca of professional wrestling for some time. And, you know, and we're now in a place where at this moment in time and the last few, they're not so much the mecca, because there are so many opportunities available. You know, the territory thing exists again, but globally. It's not confined, and Vince can't buy up all the competition like he once could. You know, people do things for themselves. People support each other. And, you know, we're blessed over here in the UK where, you know, British wrestling, all right, it's had its struggles here and there, but it still thrives. And I still think we're very, very lucky to have that, because for so long, British wrestling was in a poor place.
I mean, you look at FWA and the rise and fall of the FWA.
Absolutely.
And, you know, 1PW that we know is coming back in October in Doncaster, and what Stephen Gauntly's trying to do there, and what Steve Flood has done for PCW, and what you guys do at UKPW, and some of the, you know, the other smaller independents that are up and down the country. It's given rise to some names like Will Ospreay, to Saraya Knight. I still can't get used to not calling her Paige, to the Bettis brothers, to, you know, anyone, you know, Jordan Devlin, if you want to go to a degree, Doudrop.
Yeah. I still say to this day, you know, well, obviously, you know, we've touched on before, I work UKPW as well as I do my Kieran Cross management for Elite Wrestling Entertainment. I still, you know, sometimes pinch myself, and I'm looking at young talent like Danny Black, for example, Josh Joe Lando. You know, we sometimes work with Simon Miller. We have faces in a small promotion like us that are in places like Progress, that are on the network, WWE network, that have this exposure. And I think that's one of the things I love about British wrestling is everyone goes everywhere, and, you know, and everyone gets a taste of what these people can offer. And you see some of these faces from where they were so green and young and learning to where they are now. And sometimes you're in awe of like how they've grown over the years, and that, you know, when you see people like Rhea O'Reilly, for example, I mean, her list of accomplishments is absolutely incredible globally, and she's still, you know, appearing at all these other promotions all around the UK and stuff like that. I love that.
I mean, you take someone like the Amazon Aisha Ray, who is doing so much stuff now in Stardom. You know, the female New Japan. That's what it is, right? Been on WWE, been on AEW, been on Impact. You know, Jamie Hayter, a friend of mine, who's done pretty much anything and everything. It's great to see UK talent, and you have to look at it and go, if it hadn't been for the WWE, if it hadn't been for the Mecca, they wouldn't have done that. That's what gave everyone who's been involved in the industry that kick up the arse, is because you wanted to, whether or not you admit it or not. And I know someone like Will Ospreay will say it was never what I intended to do, but at some point you wanted to be at WrestleMania. You wanted to compete on that grand stage. You wanted to have that Winged Eagle championship and be called the WWF champion or the WWE champion. That's what you wanted. And that's because you bought into the vision of what Vince McMahon was trying to sell you. Key word there, sell you. Vince was a salesman. I personally,
I still think that whether many still want to admit it or not, I still think there's that little part of them burning inside them that would love to still have a WrestleMania moment. If they could have it, I still think they would. Just to say, I did WrestleMania. I performed at WrestleMania. You know, and you know.
When you talked on One Night Stand, when we did that last show, and you talked about what it was like to be in Dallas for WrestleMania as a fan, and the WrestleMania moment you got seeing the glass pop and Austin come out and the lights go down and the Undertaker come out for the Hall of Fame ceremony. You know, that's a fan getting that WrestleMania moment and getting that adrenaline. Being in the back, about to lace up those boots and walk down that aisle and get into that squared circle and compete. Yeah. It's the boyhood dream has come true, if you want to quote Vince.
There's one thing that's always stuck in my. I've always said WrestleMania 17, in my opinion, and I know a lot of people agree, is the greatest WrestleMania of all time, in my opinion. There's one moment in that for me that always gives me goosebumps anytime I watch it, even after all these years. When the Undertaker's about to wrestle Triple H and he comes out onto the stage on his motorcycle for the first time, there's a camera shot from just behind him, and you can see everyone in Houston, like the crowd and everything like that. That for me was one of the single greatest 1.5 second shots I've ever seen, because I watched that and there was a part of me straight away that, like, literally every hair on my body stood up on end, and I went, whoa, what a shot that is. And sometimes I go back and I pause that and I'm thinking, that's one man that's gone on that stage and all of these people are cheering and going absolutely mental and watching him. The adrenaline that must go through your body at that moment has got to be something like you could never feel anywhere else. And that for me just encapsulates that one shot and camera angle for me just encapsulates exactly everything what you would expect being a main star on a WrestleMania card.
Well, we got more to talk about in terms of Vince McMahon and the WWE. We're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, let's talk more about the relationship between Stephanie and Shane, and also Stephanie and Nick Khan. Stay with me for just a second. We're going to go to a break. We'll be back after this.
Hey, this is Olympic gold medalist and TNA World Heavyweight Champion Kurt Angle, and you're listening to The Squared Circle. Oh, it's real. It's damn real. And you better be listening or I'll break your freaking ankle.
Welcome back to the second part here at The Squared Circle. Andy, of course, joined by Stefan Bennett. In the first part, we were talking all about Vince. We were talking about the WWE, the transition that they're going to be going through now, sharing moments about what it would be like to compete at WrestleMania and talking about the UK scene. A really good discussion there. But what I want to talk about now, if I can, is switching gears, because the one thing that I think we were always brought up to believe, and you might hear different, is the idea is that it would be Shane taking over the WWE. And I remember reading a story earlier on today, actually, where Dave Meltzer actually recounted a story where he went, no, Stephanie turned around and said, no, I will be the one taking over. Now, there is a sibling rivalry between her and Shane. They don't get on. They don't socialize. They don't interact. So don't expect Shane back. But would it have been different if Shane had took over the reins, or is Stephanie the best one to run it?
I think the right call's been made. I think Stephanie's the one. I mean, I don't know whether it was a gender thing where a lot of people thought, a woman could run a multi-billion-dollar wrestling promotion, the biggest company wrestling promotion in the world. I don't know. There was the one time where I've realised that I don't think Shane was ever going to take over was that time when Shane disappeared for years and he didn't come back until, what was it, something like 2012 or whatever it was when he came back. And when he was gone and he was doing his own businesses and things like that, I was pretty certain that just wasn't going to happen. And I don't know what it is. Obviously, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in the McMahon household, especially when it comes to family gatherings. But I don't know, there always seems to be this fragility between Shane and the rest of the McMahon family. I mean, we heard about Shane, what happened after the Royal Rumble. There was that, to basically, kick your own son out or whatever was going on. It just, I just don't think Shane, to be fair, has been as interested in running the company or as passionate about it. I think Shane is a performer, not an owner.
I always wonder if Shane had maybe taken the side of Linda McMahon, because, the rumors have been out there now for a while since the allegations came out. And in fairness, we haven't touched on the allegations, but I don't think we really need to, considering they've been out for so long now, that Vince and Stephanie, Vince and Linda have separated. So I could always see Shane being more of a mummy's boy rather than, Stephanie always being the $1 billion princess, Danny's little girl, even from a young age. And You could always see that. So I don't think I'm surprised like you. What I am surprised about, though, is Nick Khan. Because the last few years, whenever you hear WWE, you hear Nick Khan. And you hear Nick Khan, maybe not in the most favorable terms. The man who's responsible for the budget cuts, the releases, the 90 superstars in the space of 2.5, 3 years. Excuse me, that were released. Some of the names that you wouldn't expect, like Wyndham Rotunda, like the Iconics, now co-CEO of the WWE.
Yeah.
What is his agenda? Do you think he will try and sell WWE to the highest bidder?
I am on board with that. I think that's potentially. I mean, there's no smoke without fire. We know that. That all these talks about, 1 minute WWE is going to be sold to Fox, and then Disney are apparently going to buy it, and things like that. And this is what Nick Khan's preparing for, the inevitable for, WWE to be snapped up, and that. And I that still concerns me that is the agenda. I'm probably 70% certain that is what his agenda is. I hope it's not. Him being co-CEO is the only thing about these changes that concerns me. I don't think he's a wrestling guy.
No, he's not.
I don't think he's a wrestling guy at all. And I think that's the problem as well. I mean, I know you need to have a businessman, obviously in that role, which obviously Vince was, but I think it would help to have someone who wants to do what is best for the brand, the company, as well as those who buy into the company, the fans. That for me is key. And I expect, I'm not saying this is going to happen. I expect there's going to be a very fragile relationship between Nick Khan and Stephanie over the course of the next year or two. I think there's going to be a lot of strain there. I do actually think it will get to a point where one of those won't last. And
so how long do you give it? 18 months, 2 years before we get the for sale sign up?
I would say 18 months, 2 years. I think, I don't think it's going to be too long for the cracks to already show. Because I think as soon as them two disagree on something, that is when we're going to start to see a problem. I mean, Stephanie's first and foremost isn't the sort of person that's ever going to back down on her belief and what she thinks right. No. I think Nick Khan needs to know his place, that although he is co-CEO, it is a McMahon family business. And while there are McMahons still running it,
But does that mean anything? Because we say it's a McMahon family business, and yes, there's a McMahon at the top, and there always has been a McMahon at the top. Now it's Stephanie McMahon, but it's a publicly traded company. Vince, this is another thing that we've kind of forgotten about. Vince is still the majority shareholder of WWE. He's just no longer an active control.
That's my point. Exactly. That's my point, and that is why I think a lot of people are still skeptical about Vince being completely retired and completely hands off because of the shares being majority shareholder. Unless one of the next big things that we see over the next 6 months to a year is that Vince sells majority of his shares to anyone else, there will be that little tiny part of me inside that will still think Vince is somewhere still probably, because let's face it, Vince McMahon is going to retire. He's retiring, and he's going to finally have very little to do with the company for the first time since he built it up. I think it's going to be very difficult for him for the first 6 months to a year or so to not want to try and dip his fingers back in and try and have some sort of influence or whatever. But I think that's what he needs to do. He needs to be told you've got to stay completely back off of this now. But the Nick Khan thing, that's the thing that concerns me, because I don't think I've heard any positives really about him as an actual person, as well as
No. I mean, the only thing I know about him is that he's the friend of The Rock. So, there's been a report going out this weekend that The Rock is potentially interested in buying WWE. There was even a report that the board would be, and I'm just reading my notes now, the board would be interested in selling it to Tony Khan for a price tag of $5 billion. Now, Tony Khan, in fairness, doesn't have $5 billion to pay for WWE, right? But imagine if he got a conglomerate. Imagine if it was like Fusion Media back in 2001. Eric Bischoff with a few, business people got the money together to put an offer, serious offer to WWE. And you've then got Tony Khan owning AEW, Ring of Honor, and WWE, WCW, SMW,
It's
tape library. I mean, that is just, talk about a monopoly in professional wrestling. I mean, that's just.
that's almost like every wrestling fan's dream, isn't it? In some way, if they were a multi-billionaire, to actually tell us, say, do you know, I was a fan, and now look at me. I now own every big major promotion there is that exists in the world of professional wrestling. But I think that's the one thing that I dislike about Tony Khan is he does show too much of his fandom. And I do think it clouds his judgment a lot. Hence, one of the reasons why they're so stacked. And that is he's a rich kid in a toy shop. He can just pick what he wants within reason.
I think we need to be worried if we suddenly see a rescheduling of Dynamite to a Monday evening. I think we need to be worried because you might get Tony Khan saying, "I've bought the competition that's in my hands."
I mean, who knows? I mean, this is the thing, though. We laugh about it, but. If you really think about it, with all this uncertainty of what direction WWE are going to go in now, is if it's ever likely for something that crazy to happen, we're now in that position. We're now in that time.
I mean, even 3 years ago, when the rumors started coming out, during the pandemic about the selling, I don't think any of us really ever took it seriously that WWE would be sold. I mean, I remember covering it on TWS with Dan back in the day.
TWS.
Yeah, rest in peace. It was a great show. That they're going to, sell the WWE to the highest bidder, and we all just laughed it off and just went, "Yeah, it's never going to happen." But we also said it's never going to happen that Vince is going to retire. The only way they would get him out is in a double wide, double deep casket being rolled out by Mark Calloway. That's the only way.
That is actually how I predicted it. To be fair, I actually predicted it because of, again, touching on what we've touched on before. Looking at him, you could see he was worn. He's worn down. I said when I see him at Mania, he didn't look right. His voice is going. He sounds like a tired old man. And fair play to him. He's earned that right to be a tired old man because he's worked his backside off through all of this for so many years. But I did actually expect that to be where he leaves is, we get an announcement early hours of one morning and whatnot. CEO, chairman of WWE, Vincent Kennedy McMahon, sadly passed away, at the age of whatever. That's how I expected it to happen. I didn't think you could drag him kicking and screaming from his company. I thought that would be how it would happen. But lo and behold, that's not the case.
So why now? The allegations have been out for over a month, 4 to 6 weeks. Why now?
I think it's a cocktail of disaster, isn't it? I mean, it's one thing. The allegations that don't help. The fact, I think, with his age, he doesn't need this kind of negativity and drama. The fact that the board had obviously shown their concerns, so he took a step back. I think it's a culmination. I think it's like a lethal cocktail of various different things that all just build into one, where it's just kind of almost become untenable. And it was either, walk away with his head held high and say thank you to everyone. It's time for me to go. Thank you for years of support. Love you, and whatnot, and then ride off into the sunset, and then grow old and die gracefully. Or he continued to do what the normal Vince McMahon thing would do, which is to go laugh in the face of adversity, be like, you got allegations, yeah, bring them on, blah, 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 like that. And that's what we thought he was doing when he randomly showed up on Raw and SmackDown and just said, welcome to Raw, Monday Night Raw, welcome to Friday Night SmackDown, and then bucketed off again.
With those promos that made no sense. And then that past Monday. Last Monday,
I thought that was just genuinely Vince being Vince, just to piss people off. That's what I thought.
But it was, because apparently when he went backstage after Friday Night SmackDown, he said, well, that's, F them.
Yeah.
It's a weird state of affair. My concern is there's something else about to break. And the only reason he's gone now is to prevent it from breaking. And that's got to be something big.
I mean, one thing as well, which we haven't mentioned as well, is the fact that it was only a few weeks ago that Stephanie said that she was taking leave of absence to focus on her family. So that leads me to believe that there has to be something huge going on for her to revert from that and not only come back, but, go into more important duties, which is basically her father's role. And now you've got Triple H, who was, because of his health, calming things down a bit with the responsibilities, but still, working on some things and then maybe going back to just his old duties. Now taking on all of his duties and now being the head of talent relations as well as creative. I don't think you're far right. I think there's something there. There's something is brewing under the surface here, and we're only a matter of time before we see it.
Which is why I wonder if that's why he's retired. Did he retire to prevent it from being released? Is there an agreement? Have they paid the Washington Post off? Because we know now that they've had to redo some financials because it was shown that he paid in total $14.3 million, which Vince is saying he's paying back. I love that. I'll just go into my wallet and give you a check for $14.3 million. Who knows? I'd love that to happen. But for him, it's chump change, right?
Yeah.
So $14.3 million in hush money. The one superstar that hasn't been officially named but has kind of been teased was the 2006 WWE Diva, where Paul London has said was Ashley Masaro, the late Ashley Masaro. Again, I'm not going to go into much detail on the allegations. They've been made. For me, the timing tells you everything. Something is either brewing or has brewed, is about to hit the fan, and he's gone, no, the board have gone, you've got to go now or we're done. It's got to be it.
I think, I mean, I wonder if it's going to be, you remember where we've had the speaking out movement in BritWres in the past, whether it's going to be like the Vince McMahon WWE version of that, where there's going to be this massive, crap storm of everyone start talking out. You have all these, obviously, sadly, Ashley is no longer with us, as we know, God rest her. She'll never be able to speak up, but people maybe close to her may on her behalf. You've got, the likes of Christy Hemme that were around at the time. It makes you wonder about them. I wouldn't be surprised if this is why, with Vince out of the line right now and, riding off into the sunset, it's kind of like, well, WWE can't catch the flack for all of this because, well, Vince has gone. Yeah. It's kind of like, hey, we're nothing to do with Vince McMahon anymore. He's gone. So maybe that's what they've done. They've timed it impeccably to get him to retire because they know something's about to break out and potentially would have ruined the company's name if he'd still be in charge.
I mean, it's good corporate business, isn't it? Cut ties and they go from the top. But you do the crime, you do the time, you pay the crime. It's
absolutely
one of those things.
I mean, it's a shame because I wouldn't like to have thought of Vince McMahon like that. A man that you've sort of grown up and you've respected for so many years, and a man that's been responsible for giving you so much entertainment and great memories throughout your life. You don't want to believe these things, but unfortunately,
Well, that nicely brings me on to my last point and the last thing that I want us to debate. How will Vince's legacy be remembered? Is it going to be remembered for being the pioneer in professional wrestling, the god, the messiah of wrestling promotion, and the man who put professional wrestling on the map? Or is it now going to be remembered as someone who was abuser of women, hush money, silencer? Is that going to be Vince's legacy now?
Yes and no. It's wrestling fandom. People are always going to be split. There are going to be people like us that will say he was the messiah. He was the one that gave us, this lovely, wonderful world of wrestling that we have now is largely down to what he built and what people, took from and were inspired by to create what they have now. But at the same time, there will also be the ones out there that like to hate on everybody as well. And some out there will turn around and say, no, he was wrong. He did a lot of dodgy dealings. He was up to a lot of no good behind the scenes. That may very well be the case, but it doesn't change the fact that he still did what he did for professional wrestling and, and making it a global, brand. And shed the limelight on wrestling, with the deals with MTV and WrestleMania and allowing all that to grow. So, I don't know, but I think the majority rules that Vince will go down as the man, the promoter, the one when it comes down to wrestling. It will be Vince McMahon top, and that will be it. In our lifetime, there'll be no one that could do bigger than what he's done.
No, and I completely agree with you. I mean, I just want to add to that, I'm sure I speak for you as well. I don't condone the actions of what Vince has done. Absolutely not. But it's very difficult, isn't it? Because and I might get heat for this, you get a comparison between Benoit, not to a certain degree, but in terms of what he did, you can never condone him for. But then if you
that was literally my next words were Chris Benoit is, if you turn around and say, is Chris Benoit one of the greatest wrestlers you've ever seen compete ever? The answer is yes. Do you condone what he did? Well, if he did it, no. I mean, I know there's still some sketchy things around it. I personally, I don't think it's as black and white as it's been made out. But I wasn't there. Who am I to say? If he did do and was 100% responsible for what happened in his personal life, etc., shame on him. Don't condone that. And, it's disgusting. But in terms of his craft in the business that we love and very, very dearly, and for the entertainment and the moments he gave us in that respect, absolutely 110 billion% he was one of those. You have to learn to separate the person on screen, the performer to the person, because as we know in wrestling, and as we've learned from seeing so many tragic tales like Scott Hall, who had so much redemption in the end, thankfully, it gave us more years with Scott in our lives. And allowed so many of the younger generation to meet Scott Hall, which might not have happened. People have their demons. They're no different to any one of us. People struggle with mental health, whatever it be. Some people, they make big mistakes. We know, we know about, Booker T had issues when he was younger, and what a wonderful man he is. It doesn't define who you are. But when you talk about like what Benoit's done, that's kind of on a different level, so that's a very touchy thing. But for those who have, regardless of who they are as performers, if they've made us cheer for them, boo them, they've entertained us and that, then they deserve all the gratitude and all the plaudits that come their way. Who they are in their private lives is who they are in their private lives. I'm not really interested in who they are in their private lives. I'm invested in who they are in the ring.
When you put that Raw or SmackDown or Dynamite or NXT or Rampage, for the amount of time that you watch that show, there's that suspension of disbelief. It's watching a soap opera, isn't it? That's the old adage. It's a soap opera.
Absolutely. But I want to end on asking you probably one of the biggest questions in terms of the direction WWE potentially going to go in. Are you ready for this, Andy?
Go on then.
What now becomes of Veer Mahan?
Released.
Come on, Vince was just starting to he was making us suffer, and now that's what now happens with Veer Mahan?
Well, I'll put it this way: he's lasted longer than Mantar did, which is
absolutely.
Which is a testament. I'm going to wrap it up now, Brilliant. Stefan. It's been amazing speaking. In one word now, how would you describe Vince and his legacy and everything? How would you sum up Vince McMahon?
One word, I'm going to say. I'm going to call him the architect.
Oh, very nice.
The Architect.
Very nice. Yeah, that's good. I like that one. I was going to cheat and go goat, but I think the Architect works much better. It's going to be, I think, without a doubt, one of the most interesting periods to be a wrestling fan, and that level of excitement, I think, is getting back to the point as when AEW debuted.
Yeah, just give it time. But like I said, Rome wasn't built in a day. Give it time. There's so much that needs sorting. Give it time, and then we'll see. Like I said, when we get to around Rumble to Mania sort of time, and that, I think by then we should start seeing the foundations of what they might be looking to do.
Absolutely. Just before we wrap up, very quickly, a couple of quick points. Claudio Castagnoli, Ring of Honor. What's your take on that?
Fantastic. Well done to him. Love it. He's deserved gold. For so much of his career, one of the best. We talk about amazing performers, some of the absolute best. We talk about Benoit being one of the best technical. Cesaro's up there in terms of ability, and I just hope that he's happy. Finally,
too quick though. Too quick. Debuted in AEW only about 3 weeks ago.
Yes, too quick, but. In some ways, but we've been waiting ages for Claudio to get a main event title, and it may have been too quick, but it's happened, so we can't do anything about it. But congratulations to him.
And then the last thing, just to point out, very quick prediction. I think I know where you're going to go. Roman Brock, SummerSlam.
Brock.
Really?
It makes no sense to have Brock lose again now. I still think Reigns might take the title back by Mania. I think it's got to go Brock. If it doesn't go Brock, right, I would go Reigns if there's an interference of some sort from someone returning. That's what I will say would be acceptable for Lesnar to lose. Because say, for example, it was Bray Wyatt. Because let's face it, it was The Fiend, Bray Wyatt, that Reigns won the title from.
Yeah.
When he took the title, WWE actually shed light on that this week. They actually showed that clip again with The Fiend losing the title to Reigns. If it happens to be something like Wyatt coming back and taking out Brock, maybe, and or taking down Reigns, I'm out. I'm good with it.
Okay. And last one, very last one. Ric Flair's last match. We know it's a tag team match. We know it's Andrade, El Idolo, Ric Flair facing off against Double J, Jeff Jarrett, and Jay Lethal. Is it wrong to say it's a foregone conclusion? You know it's going to be Ric Flair going over. Do you want to see it? Is it going to be worth it? No, I think
I worry for him, but then again, a tag team match because of his age and etc. makes sense. I'll watch it. I love Rick to bits. Out of respect for him, I'll watch it. It's not something I do think he should have just stayed away now. I really do. But I hope he enjoyed it and he's safe.
I will say this. I think Conrad and his team, Conrad Thompson, did an amazing job promoting it. I mean, that documentary series they did on ricslastmatch.com and that last thing they did setting up with Jeff was tremendously done. I mean, that was big league level.
Let's not forget, that card is pretty good.
Oh, it's stacked.
For the whole event. Yeah. It's a great card. So, I would probably sound more invested in the rest of the card than the main event.
Yeah, I think I am as well. I mean, would you say it's a better card than SummerSlam?
At the moment, oh, yeah. There's nothing about SummerSlam at the moment that I'm interested in at the moment.
And that's scary, isn't it? The second biggest show of the WWE in a calendar year, and there's nothing that's getting our interest.
It's a shame, but it was like that. We were like this when it was coming up to a few weeks before WrestleMania. Some people still didn't know what the final card were going to be over the 2 nights, and a lot of it, and some of it did feel thrown together.
I remember talking to you before you went. Yeah, I remember talking to you before you went, and it was I don't know if it's going to be any good, but it did. Stefan, it has been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. We've covered so much land here tonight, and it'll be good to get back together again very soon. Maybe talk about the recap of SummerSlam and Ric Flair's last match.
Yes, absolutely. If I could do a couple of quick shout-outs as well. We got UKPW performing this Friday night at the Pentagon Shopping Centre in Chatham, Kent. We're also in Bexley Heath High Street. We're doing a show there. And Elite Wrestling Entertainment at the Bedford in Balham Crisis Point is going to be a fantastic show that evening at the Bedford in Balham in London. So go online, social media platforms, get your tickets, come along, see us on any of those shows. Be greatly appreciated.
Fantastic. Check it out. I will make it to a UKPW show at some point because I've been desperate to get down there for quite a while. So I will make it to London to come
to an EWE show and everything. I'm sure Kieran Cross would love to meet you, Andy.
Yeah, I don't want to go for that reason. You know, I'm too young. I'm too young to die. Too young and handsome to die. Actually, maybe.
Cheers, Andy. I appreciate it. Thank you, mate.
No worries. We'll be back next week with more of the Retro Chat podcast and the Squared Circle. Bit of a change in programming this week because we were going to be doing Retro Chat on G.I. Joe. That is still going to happen. This kind of took priority, talking about Vince McMahon and on the TSC. We'll be back very soon. Until then, see you soon. Stefan, thanks again. We will be back very soon. Until then, bye-bye.